Welcome to All Things Financial with Jack Driscoll. Each week, Jack takes on all things you thought were hard to understand about your finances and makes it fun, easy, but most of all interesting. From insurance to the best way to save your money and squeeze the most out of the dollars you put aside for your rainy day. And now, you have a friend in the money business. Here's your host, Jack Driscoll.
Welcome back, everyone, to another edition of All Things Financial. Today, I wanted to talk to you about, it struck me about a week or two ago, there are some topics and areas and just things that I've come across that are still the same today and still as truthful and valid today, concepts with financial planning and finances, as they were 43 years ago when I got into the business. So I thought I ought to bring out some of those as timeless truths that I think were true 100 years ago, I think will be true 100 years from now. And they're financial concepts that I remember when I got into the business and when I first learned them, I was saying them 40 years ago and they're still true today. So I thought they'd be a good topic or an area, a source of topic for me to share from time to time on this show. So one of the timeless truths, and probably one of the most important concepts I ever learned, that I was able to share with clients over all these years, was the concept of pay yourself first. And some of you may have heard of that concept, some of you may not have. I've shared this before over shows, and I'm now coining it timeless truths because it's one of those core concepts that doesn't seem to change and doesn't seem to ever be wrong. So here's what the concept of pay yourself first was all about. It started with, at least the way it was presented to me, was that whatever a person earns, the fallacy of why their finances are never going well is because they're doing certain habits wrong. So we all go out and work, we all go out after our high school or college years and we get a job. And what we do is we try to build up to get some of the things we've always wanted. So the first thing is, we'll get our cell phones on our own, and we'll get our computers on our own, and we'll get our tablets, and then we'll buy our cars, and then we'll buy our houses, the things we've always dreamt of and always wanted. And one of the big problems we realize in our 40s are, hey, we seem to be going under, or we seem to always never have enough money. And that goes back to, I think, the root of one of these timeless truths, which was pay yourself first. And the concept was, if we could catch people before they come out of school, before they get their first job, and get them to save the first 10% of every paycheck for themselves forever for their future, not allocated to anything, except for building toward their future, those people could be far better off. So we've analyzed that concept, many people before me, and this pay yourself first concept of pay yourself the first 10% of every paycheck, set it aside, and don't hold it safely, but put it to work. So the concept was they're dollars, and with every dollar that you have, you're hiring a worker. So every dollar becomes a worker, and you put it hard to work. That was the concept. So you take 10% of your pay. If your pay is $2,000, then 10% of your pay is $200 a month. So you're hiring 200 workers to work as hard for you as you did for it. That was the beginning concept. And then the examples would go, if somebody sets money aside at 10 and it earns 10% over so many years, then it's working as hard for you as you did for it. And the examples come to where we're going to work every day, sometimes working for bosses we don't like, sometimes working at jobs we don't like, sometimes working with people we don't like, and people that don't like us. Why? Because we need to go to work every day to get the cars we want and the houses we want and the lifestyles and the standards of living, right? Well, that's fine until it goes on forever and ever and ever and it feels like you're not getting anywhere. So this concept of pay yourself first, going back to the beginning, we would be speaking to all our high school and college kids. And we would be imploring them to embrace this message before you start on the paycheck trail of life. So here's how an example works and why we would do it. The concept of if a person is successful in life, what is that value? We'd normally say, what's the value of a person's life and how do we deem ourselves successful at the end of life? Well, that concept leads right into this pay yourself first. But normally that's answered by we've been healthy, we have a nice family, we have assets, we've kept some of what we've made, we're financially secure in retirement, things like that. So the question always came back to, okay, let's say you enter the workforce at age 22 and you exit the workforce at age 67, let's say, because that's what Social Security says is the full retirement age. So let's take that for example. If I meet you or anybody meets you at age 67, that's 45 years later after age 22, what would we ask? We'd be asking questions like, hey, how are you doing? How was your life? Tell me about your life. And how well have you done? And you'd say, I have a nice car, I have a nice family, I got kids through college, we have our homes paid off, et cetera, et cetera. We're doing pretty well. And we'd say, okay. A financial person would say the next step. All right, let me ask you a question. Do you have any idea how much money over all those years has gone through your hands in the form of paychecks, tax refunds, whatever money's ever come to you? How much money has come to you over your whole life, and how much of it do you still have? That question should stymie most everybody. So in an example where I started with someone age 22 starting the workforce, $2,000 a month, so I'm starting moderate numbers, and I'm saying $2,000 a month, and that is $24,000 a year. Over 45 years, that's about $1 million. I've added that up. So how much pay did you receive in your hands? And then I or anybody that at age 67 would ask you, how much of that do you still have? And you'd say, well, I have a part of that. I have some because I have a house paid off, et cetera. I have some accounts. And then we would normally see that someone might say, we don't have much in our hands, but we have these other assets. So we would, at 65, do a rewind and say, okay, back to 22, if you change just one thing, just one habit, did you pay yourself first? And everyone would say no. And if we can catch the college kids and the high school kids and say, listen, change one habit. When you first start getting paychecks, take the first 10% of every paycheck, $200 on $2,000 a month. I don't care if it's $50 on $500. Set the first 10% aside and spend all the rest. Live on all the rest. Why do we do that? It's because a concept was also taught to me early that if a person graduates from school and is an auto mechanic, they're going to consume all of their pay because they're going to build their lifestyle into whatever their pay is. And if a person graduates after all the years as a doctor, once they get out, they're going to spend all of their pay. They're going to build a lifestyle into all of their pay, and their lifestyle will consume all of their pay. So the concept was, it's not how much a person makes, it's the habit of however much we make. We're going to build our lifestyle as big as we can get it, because we have a fundamental concept in personality of we all want more than we have, and we all want to be better off than we are. So no matter how much we make, the fundamental concept is we're going to spend it all because we continuously keep wanting more. That's an asset to being human. That's actually a good thing. We're always searching for more. But it's a bad thing in the habits of finance. So what we do, there's one change. We change the model of pay yourself first and then build your lifestyle. Pay yourself first means set money aside that you never consume, that you hire workers, and those workers go to work for you to build an asset base, to build wealth, future wealth, not current wealth. That's the concept. So let's take the example. We're at age 67. We're asking how much went through your hands. And if you add it up at $24,000 a year over 45 years, I've discounted any potential pay raises, any inflation, to keep these numbers as low and reasonable as they can be. So I'm not embellishing them at all. You'll have had about $1 million go through your hands. If you've changed this one habit and pay yourself first the $200 a month, set it aside, put it in hardworking accounts, and if they grow at 10% a year, which that estimate was averaging, it could be any amount, and it changes the results, then you will see, even at 8%, taking it on the low side of what all these estimates have always been taught, over that 45 years, if you don't touch it and you put all those workers in a box, and over 45 years you leave them in that box working to grow money for you, that's their sole purpose, grow money for you and multiply. When you open that box, the 8% box will open, and guess how much will be in there? It'll be slightly over $1 million. Now, think about that for a minute. What does that mean? That means by putting $200 a month away, which was the first 10% of any salary, and if your salaries grow, yes, you should be continuing the 10% model. Not $200 a month, but 10% of whatever comes into your hands model. The first 10% goes to who? To you. Not your mortgages and your car loans. The first 10% goes to you. You live on all the rest. And if that happens, even without the raises, remember how much we said $24,000 a year over 45 years was that went through your hands over your whole life? A little over $1 million, right? Guess how much is in that box? That $200 of workers hired at 8% created for you. It's a little over $1 million. So by just saving the first 10% and spending all the rest, that first 10% over that long number of years, at that rate of return was able to recreate all of your whole life earnings to be used all over again once you retire. Is that miraculous? That is a timeless truth. That is something I learned 40 years ago. That is something people 40 years before me learned. And that's something 40 years from now they'll learn again. But how many of us are applying it? It's a truth. At 10%, which was what the examples were that I always learned on, it's over $2 million is in that box. Double your whole life earnings. It's a great habit. When you look at that habit and you look at these concepts, they're simple sounding, but they're powerful concepts. When you do this, you've led the life that many people will never lead. And the reason is because of one simple habit change. That is more important than probably any other lesson I've ever learned in finance. The second lesson I learned was the cost to wait. Because many people would say, I have these bills, or I want to do these things, and let me get those out of the way. Let me get my first car, let me get my first house, and then I'll start. It's doomed. But the cost to wait calculations have already been done. They've also been done in these examples, and I did some myself over the years. And I looked at the example of, what if we didn't do it when we were 22? What if we did it when we were 5 years later, let's say, and we were 27 and then started? So I looked at the cost to wait just 5 years and then do it until you're age 65. Same numbers, $24,000 a year, salary $2,000 a month. We save $200 a month, but instead of over 45 years, it's over 40 years. Same 8% interest, same numbers. And I did those numbers and I found that cut the amount in that box at age 67 by about $300,000. It was $698,000 in there instead of a little over $1 million, just by waiting 5 years. Is that crazy? And then I looked at 10 years. So what if we started at 32 instead of 22? Or what if you weren't even hearing this message until you were age 32 and you didn't have a chance to do it until 22? Well, the cost to wait is still the same, whether you knew about the lesson or not. And that cost to wait knocked it down even more. And interestingly, it knocked it down to almost only 40 to 50% of the value just by waiting 10 years out of a 45-year time period. So I looked at that, I looked into those concepts, and I thought it's more important to start early and put off some of the other goals than it is to accomplish those other goals and to start a little bit later. So starting 5 years later, hugely expensive. 10 years later, even more expensive. And think about this. If you wait 5 years, we did not do, remember, we're doing $200 a month. That's $2,400 a year. The total over 10 years cost to wait. You didn't put in $24,000, but it cost you like $600,000 to not do it. So then I did a reverse calculation. How much, when you get to age 67, did you have to do without? You know, because a lot of people say, hey, all that money that I didn't spend, it could have really helped me along the way. Look at all that money that I didn't get the use of. And a lot of people will say, the money in that box, that 8% box, was $1 million. I could have really used that all along the way. And I'll say, wait. How much of that money in that box was really yours that you put into the box? And they'll say, what do you mean? And I'll say, only the amount of money that you put into the box was actually yours. The rest was what the workers made you. So how much was really yours? And I did the math. They put $200 a month, 10% of their pay, right? $2,400 a year. And I multiplied that by 45 years, and it was $100,000. It was actually $108,000. But the total amount in there was over $1 million. That means by planting those small seeds of money, those workers in place, it only cost or took away from you being able to spend out of the $1 million that came in your hand over your whole life earnings period. You only didn't have access to $100,000, 10% of it. You got to spend 90% of it on anything you wanted. And it did create the whole rest. So it was only $100,000 of your own money in there. The rest was all earnings. By leaving it alone. That's the key. By leaving it alone. There's another saying that was very, very interesting. And Albert Einstein coined a few quotes. And one of the quotes is, and some of you may have heard this, many of you may have not, but he spoke about compound interest. And he said, Albert Einstein quoted this, you could look it up. Albert Einstein said, compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world. And compound interest is the most important mathematical concept ever discovered. That's Albert Einstein talking about that. And you can look that up. You know, when I was early in the practice, I did learn a saying, actually an example or an illustration of something, and it was a puzzle, and they'd have, or a riddle, and it would say, would you rather, some of you may have heard this, would you rather have $1 million today or the value of 1 penny doubled over 30 days? So think about that. The sure thing or the apparently not sure thing. And I remember hearing this, it has to be at least over 30 years ago. But I teach this concept because it's the concept of compound interest and compound money. So again, I'll pose that question. And you could think about what you would choose. $1 million today or the value of 1 penny doubled over 30 days. Well, the answer is $1 million in 9 out of 10 cases. It still is today. It was back when I answered it, or when I asked it, even when I first got into the practice. And it is today. So the answer of the penny, when we let the penny compound, the second day, it adds 2 pennies. The third day, it adds 4 pennies. So on day 3, you have 4 pennies plus 2 pennies from the day before, plus 1 penny from the first day, right? And every day, the amount you receive is double the prior day. So it's 8 pennies on the 4th day, and so on for 30 days. Guess how much that value is? That value is over $5 million. 1 penny doubling over 30 days. That help illustrates, I hope, the truth, but the power of compound interest. And that's what I wanted to share with you on today's show. The strong power of a timeless truth lesson that will probably stand forever, as it always has. Thanks again for tuning in to another edition of All Things Financial. We'll be back again next week.